There's nothing in the world more powerful than a good story.
Now this is gonna be a good story.
Heroes from every corner of the world unite against an evil that threatens life itself. And it comes down to one person with the last name Stark to save the day. After, they're reminded of a prophecy that assures them that their valiant act was always in the cards. How is it that the two biggest franchises of our times, Game of Thrones and the Marvel Cinematic Universe, both center on this plot point? As a matter of fact, this similarity only scratches the surface of all the ways the two stories overlap. They have numerous main characters with parallel arcs, similar overarching plots and themes, and so many random details in common, it's almost weird. Both feature a warrior with a metal hand or arm, a witch who dresses all in red and evolves from antagonist to noble ally, a special metal that begins with the letter V and comes from an ancient legendary civilization,
Vibranium, yeah. Strongest metal on Earth.
Oh, careful, Your Grace. Nothing cuts like Valyrian steel.
people dying in a way that looks like dissolving into lots of little pieces, and visions or prophecies that lead characters to live in fear of their loved ones dying prematurely. Both franchises have inspired huge fandoms, shattered records, and changed our understanding of what TV and movies can do. But in their final chapters, as Game of Thrones came to an end and the original phase of the MCU concluded in Avengers Endgame, one stumbled while the other delighted and satisfied. So what made the difference? Let's take a closer look at the weird resemblances and the final divergence between Game of Thrones and Endgame to see how they reveal today's zeitgeist, what audiences want, and how to land a very big plane when you're under pressure.
We're all going to die. But at least we die together.
We'll lose, and we'll do that together too.
Before we go on, we want to talk about this video's sponsor. Skillshare is an online learning community where you can learn everything from video editing to business strategy, coding, or lucid dreaming. They offer 25,000 online classes from famous teachers at the top of their field. And right now, Skillshare is offering our viewers 2 months access to all their classes for free. So click the link in the description below to sign up now. So first, let's talk about all that Game of Thrones and the first decade of the MCU movies have in common. Both are serialized, multi-protagonist stories told on a sweeping scale. They feature supernatural or fantasy elements and are known for their special effects and epic battle sequences. They began within a few years of each other, the MCU with Iron Man in 2008 and Game of Thrones in 2011. And the MCU closed a major chapter with Avengers Endgame just weeks before Game of Thrones aired its series finale in the first half of 2019. Each story centers on magic entering or re-entering a society that isn't used to it.
Superheroes in New York? Give me a break.
And that fears the implications of that magic.
His skin was pale, like a dead man's. His eyes bluer than clear sky.
And the story builds to a showdown with a supervillain who represents death itself.
We're fighting death!
He could destroy life on a scale hitherto undreamt of.
Plus, if you look at the cast of characters, the parallels are striking. Jon Snow and Captain America lose their parents at a young age, serve in a military order, come back to life after dying or being frozen, and act as the moral centers of their worlds.
And I'm always honest.
But when enough people make false promises, words stop meaning anything.
Fan favorites Tyrion Lannister and Tony Stark are rich, witty, highly intelligent ladies' men.
How do you know this?
That's what I do. I drink, and I know things.
When did you become an expert in thermonuclear astrophysics?
Last night.
With cold, legacy-obsessed fathers.
It's what remains of you when you're gone.
It represents my life's work.
Jaime Lannister and Thor start out as handsome, arrogant, entitled sons to powerful patriarchs. They experience losing their hand, even if for one it's only an illusion, and both pretty boys have to spend time without a significant body part. After their losses, they prove themselves worthy over time.
It's the duty of the Lord Commander to fill those pages, and there's still room left on mine.
I have much to learn. I know that now.
Jaime's and Thor's siblings, Cersei Lannister and Loki, are both smart and crafty with little regard for conventional morality.
I would burn cities to the ground.
I ask only one thing in return. A good seat from which to watch Asgard burn.
They're sidelined by their fathers, develop a fearsome power lust, and morph from villains into tragic figures. Bran Stark and Doctor Strange are each involved in an accident and lose a physical ability only to unlock new mental power under the tutelage of a wise mentor.
You'll never walk again, but you will fly.
You said that losing my hands didn't have to be the end, that it could be a beginning.
Daenerys Targaryen isn't a perfect match for any one MCU character, but she mirrors aspects of a few.
It's not easy to see something that's never been before. The good world.
How do you know it'll be good?
Because I know what is good.
If life is left unchecked, life will cease to exist. It needs correction.
You don't know that!
I'm the only one who knows that.
And perhaps most deeply, she resembles Black Panther's Eric Killmonger as the tragic figure who wants to fix an unjust world but is ultimately destroyed by their own rage.
We will lay waste to armies and burn cities to the ground.
Burn it all!
Some of the similarities could be pure coincidence, while others have an even simpler explanation. Both stories, which originated from written series, were influenced by each other's source material. Endgame screenwriter Christopher Marcus said Game of Thrones was a reference point for Avengers Infinity War. Quote, "How far apart can you keep these strands and for how long and still feel like you're telling a single narrative?" Meanwhile, A Song of Ice and Fire author George R.R. Martin has said that the Marvel comics of his youth were, quote, "a bigger influence on my own work than I would have dreamed." What Martin liked so much about the Marvel comics was that, quote, "these characters had personalities, quirks, flaws, tempers. The heroes were not all good, the villains were not all bad. The stories had twists and turns."
Did you know? Yes.
He specifically cited the influence of the Marvel character Wonder Man on his own writing.
Just like my whole career there. It's a great character. He seems to be a hero, but he's really a villain. But at the end, he's redeemed because he can't do the villainous thing, but he gives up his own life and dies heroically. All the things I love to do in my own thing.
In addition, these stories resonate on a deeper level because they center on age-old story tropes. From a hero's painful sacrifice for the greater good to the idea of creating your own monster. And the many character echoes probably come out of the fact that both draw on classic archetypes from myths and literature. Game of Thrones and the MCU channel their timeless narrative building blocks within a similar kind of story world. They present a fantastic, larger-than-life universe, but one that nonetheless reminds us of our world in its underlying social dynamics. The thrills of the epic scale and exceptional characters are grounded in down-to-earth, even cynical observations of how human civilization functions.
The powerful have always preyed on the powerless. That's how they became powerful in the first place.
There are no men like me.
There are always men like you.
Viewers today want a story that's more vibrant and exciting than our day-to-day, yet we still want it to speak authentically to what's going on in our lives and souls.
We will take back what was stolen from me and destroy those who have wronged me.
The world took everything away from me. Everything I ever loved. But I'm gonna make sure we're even.
Part of the journey is the end.
In 2019, both Game of Thrones and Marvel faced a daunting challenge thanks to their own gargantuan success. How would they wrap up years-long sagas in a way that would satisfy fans who had invested a lot of time and emotion? The two actually made similar choices in their broad strokes. The death-like supervillain is defeated, a beloved main character dies tragically, and we're told that all the bad things we've witnessed had to happen for everything to work out in the very specific and intricate way it was supposed to.
Everything you did brought you where you are now, where you belong.
Went forward in time to view alternate futures, to see all the possible outcomes of the coming conflict.
How many did you see?
14,605.
How many did we win?
1.
Yet beyond this, there's a very obvious way in which the two diverge. Endgame holds a 95% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, while the last season of Game of Thrones provoked outrage from fans, and a petition to redo the last season entirely got well over 1 million signatures. One explanation for the difference in their receptions comes down to the importance of harvesting the storytelling seeds you plant. In our Endgame video, we talked about how the movie does this very successfully. Numerous payoffs, from Captain America proving himself worthy of wielding Thor's hammer Mjolnir, to the satisfaction of finally hearing
Avengers! Assemble.
make the film feel like a celebration of the first 11 years of the MCU. Game of Thrones likewise has lots of full circle moments.
Love is the death of duty. Sometimes Duty is the death of love.
But the show also plants seeds that it doesn't harvest in the end, despite heavily emphasizing them. And the many fan theories about the Night King's true purpose apparently read far more meaning into the story than was really there. Moreover, fans' anger at Daenerys' dark turn underscores that while the seeds of her potential tyranny were planted along the way, they weren't tended in the right way. Both Game of Thrones and Endgame conclude with a final shot that's understated and quotidian compared to the fight sequences and thrills they're known for. But only one of these moments takes advantage of a long emotional setup.
You're gonna need a rain check on that dance.
The second, even more important reason why Endgame succeeds where Game of Thrones doesn't is about honoring storytelling tone. Marvel stuck to its trademark tone of cheerful, mischievous humor with an underlying earnest optimism.
What do you think about this panic attack? Get it together.
The MCU had never killed off a main character before, yet the movie makes Tony's self-sacrifice feel life-affirming, meaningful, and earned. So in spite of its painful subject matter, which could have made for a dark, gritty movie divorced from the rest of the Marvel canon, Endgame managed to bring out the sincere emotion and playfulness that have always defined the MCU.
I'll do you one better. Who's Gamora?
I'll do you one better. Why is Gamora?
Meanwhile, Game of Thrones gradually abandoned the tone that characterized its first 6 seasons.
If you think this has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention.
The show was originally known for its take-no-prisoners style, where no character's survival was certain.
The Lannisters send their regards.
But this season drew complaints of plot armor, as main characters implausibly survived outrageous dangers until almost the very end. In a show that once understood the power of giving audiences what they don't think they want, the final season prioritized moments and plot lines that were perceived as fan servicey. The Game of Thrones of Tywin Lannister was a world like ours in which brutality and injustice weren't easily defeated or solved.
Burn the villages, burn the farms. Let them know what it means to choose the wrong side.
Because they're inside of us, fundamental parts of human nature which inevitably come into play when one person gains control over another.
Explain to me why it is more noble to kill 10,000 men in battle than a dozen at dinner.
But the ending of Game of Thrones leaves us with a sense that Westeros' problems have been more or less cleared up.
From now on, rulers will not be born. They will be chosen.
This striking absence of conflict and danger as we say goodbye to the Seven Kingdoms is jarring. That's just not the Seven Kingdoms viewers fell for.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. There is no middle ground.
One of these years-long epics closed its final chapter in victory because it continued in its own voice.
You trust me? I do.
And it built on the structure it had spent many earlier chapters establishing. The other epic was harshly criticized because it stopped trusting its original voice.
I choose violence.
Abandoned its mission to challenge viewers and tried to morph into something it expected would please and impress. The fact that both of these stories have captured viewers' imagination so completely is a sign that they're tapping into something profound in our modern zeitgeist. On some level, they're speaking about today.
We can learn to live with the wildlings, or we can add them to the army of the dead.
More connects us than separates us.
Through their setup of gathering characters together to fight Thanos and the Night King, both Game of Thrones and the MCU send the message that we need to overcome our infighting and band together to defeat threats to our very existence.
But together, we can beat them.
How are you guys planning on beating them? Together.
These non-human, merciless bad guys may stand in for contemporary challenges like climate change. Still, in both stories, once that danger is vanquished, the focus turns back to the characters' interpersonal dynamics, highlighting the reality that our human nature is to fixate on these power plays and squabbles amongst ourselves. Most fundamentally, both of these epics are investigations of exceptional power and whether it's possible to use it responsibly.
If we can't accept limitations, we're boundaryless, we're no better than the bad guys.
She chose an advisor who would check her worst impulses instead of feeding them.
This striking thematic resemblance suggests that these stories are coming out of a potent current anxiety that power is becoming increasingly concentrated in the hands of fewer super-rich and influential bodies. And the dangerous magic we witness corresponds to the fear that select individuals could have so much control. Their dominance would feel insurmountable to the rest of the people.
Lannister, Targaryen, Baratheon, Stark, Tyrell. They're all just spokes on a wheel, and on it spins, crushing those on the ground.
What would you call a group of US-based, enhanced individuals
who routinely ignore sovereign borders and inflict their will wherever they choose.
On Game of Thrones, the destruction of the Iron Throne symbolizes that power is dangerous when it's concentrated, embodied in a seat for only one person to sit on. The MCU also underlines that those in power can do great harm even when they have good intentions.
Who's going to avenge my son, Stark? He's dead, and I blame you.
Yet it ultimately concludes that a collection of benevolent people who are all on the same page can wield power in the right way. It even suggests that this confederation of super powerful good guys is necessary to defeat the malevolent forces that pose an existential threat.
The idea was to bring together a group of remarkable people, see if they could work together when we needed them to fight the battles that we never could.
Of course, the problem with this argument is that the equivalent of this selfless superhero band has yet to materialize in our world. Overall, both stories underline that power must be shared. Yet, intriguingly, they don't give us visions of democratic equality. Instead, they conclude that our best bet is to place our trust in a small group of talented elites with the right motives.
I don't want it.
And I don't want to be king.
It's too bad that Game of Thrones didn't stick the landing like Endgame did. Still, if we look back, these two sagas did an admirable job of integrating sophisticated thought and social commentary into wildly popular mainstream entertainment.
Do not become what you have always struggled to defeat.
I learned from my enemies. Beat them at their own game. You have become them.
And they pushed their mediums by creating interconnected story worlds of unprecedented magnitude, beyond what movie and TV audiences or creators once thought was possible. Through these many beloved characters whose lives overlap in unexpected ways, they plant a beautiful idea in us. What if we are all connected in a greater way than we even know?
Mr. Stark, you become part of a bigger universe. You just don't know it yet.
We are part of something larger than ourselves.
This video is sponsored by Skillshare, an online learning community we love. With over 25,000 classes taught by seasoned pros, Skillshare has a class on pretty much anything you could want. You can develop your creativity through a class on calligraphy, graphic design, or writing. You can learn to succeed in business with classes on how to make it as a freelancer, market a podcast, or become an Instagram influencer. You can use it to master new technology through classes on web design, coding, and data science. Or you can bring that extra flair into your lifestyle, sharpen your knife skills, learn papermaking, speak Spanish. Or let Samantha Dion Baker, an illustrator and graphic designer, teach you how to start sketch journaling.
It's the idea that you're having an art-making creative practice while also recording your memories.
Right now, Skillshare is offering our viewers 2 months access to all their classes for free. Just click the link in the description below and check it out today.